The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone, this is Faz Kareem with Learnit, and today's course is going to be on PowerBi. This is the beginner course of the series. It's best to start here. Now if you don't know, PowerBi is actually a free desktop app that you can download from the Microsoft Store. There also is something known as PowerBi Service, which is an online tool that allows you to share your reports and dashboards in a workspace that you publish. That portion requires a subscription, but we won't be needing it in today's course. Today's course will be using the desktop app that you can download from the Microsoft Store. And as long as you have a Windows device, you'll be good to go. So be sure to be using the desktop app today while we cover today's course materials in PowerBi Beginner. We're going to start out Lesson 1, Introducing PowerBi. For those folks that are brand new to the business intelligence tool, we're going to start the course with an interface tour. It's very similar to our other Office products, our Microsoft 365 tools like Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. There's dozens of various data sources that you can choose to import. And we're going to go through how we can import data and run through the various examples and showcase what type of data sources you can connect to PowerBi that are built in. We're going to be using the data that we import into the PowerBi report to build visuals and ultimately build a report that we can share with others. In order to get that report published and in working order, there's going to be some work that we need to do. We might need to shape the data, make some transformations to the data, and even combine the data. For those of us that have been using Power Query, or more formally known as the Get and Transform group in Excel's Data tab, Power Query makes a return in PowerBi. And we can use Power Query to do that transformation and that combining of our data. Ultimately, we're going to produce a report today using our data and the transformations that we've made. So some learning outcomes that you can expect from today is being able to import well-formed data into the PowerBi desktop app, being able to build reports with stunning visuals, being able to create and edit query steps in Power Query, learn about the basic data transformation tools, and combine data from different data sources and tables. Let's get started.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
All right. I went ahead and launched PowerBi Desktop. I've also saved the file. I've named mine PowerBi Beginner. I highly recommend to save your work before starting with any importing or creating of the visuals. You want to make sure to have the file saved with the name and its designated location, just in case any issues happen with the device you're working on, or if the software crashes, you'll still have your work saved. Now let's begin with a quick little interface tour. Now, if we're familiar with other Microsoft 365 tools, we should be very comfortable picking up PowerBi. because Power BI has also adopted the ribbon interface, which most of our Office products, our Microsoft 365 tools, already have. Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out about the ribbon. The ribbon is organized in various tabs. Power BI doesn't have that many, as File, Home, Insert, Modeling, View, Optimize, and Help. And depending on if you have a shape or a text box selected, there might be some contextual tabs that pop up there. And then on the bottom of these tabs, you're going to notice that they have labels. These labels are known as command groups. They're just labels to help kind of organize the tools and groupings. So I like to use this to navigate the tool, mentioning that I'm in a specific tab, mentioning that I'm in a specific command group, before going and using that specific command, which is a tool that I'd use. It's nice to know that, just like Excel, the ribbon interface has a search box that you can use. This will help you getting started with Power BI, helping you find specific tools that you don't really know the location for, but know you've used before. So there isn't too much new with the ribbon interface. I want to talk about some Power BI specific areas though. Yeah. I'm going to clear this off my screen here. And I want to talk about our very first area in Power BI. On the left-hand side here, I see this little icon that's selected. It kind of looks like a graph or a visualization to me. That's called the report view. Now, the report view has a couple of panes that I want you to know about. On the bottom here, I can see that the report view is showing me that I have one page. Currently, that page is called page 1. It's not titled yet. The report view lets me add additional pages, kind of like how I would add worksheets in an Excel workbook. And I get to see the report view on a monitor or a mobile device view, because sometimes these reports are shared with apps and mobile devices. Now, if you look over here on the right-hand side, though, I'm going to open this up here. I'm going to open up the data one as well. This report view has a couple of details that we want to just notice, because we'll be using them today when we dabble in the report view. On the right here, I have access to something called the filters pane. When I add data, I'll be able to filter by specific data from here. I can filter on a specific page that I've created or on all pages in my report. And then I also have this area right over here. And it's known as the visualizations pane. This is where I can go and select the visuals that I want to add to my page. And if I want, I can format the visuals once I have them selected from here as well. I can drag and drop the specific fields that I want to use to create the visual. And then here on the right-hand side, the very far right, I have the Get Data, the data pane. So the Get Data pane is going to show me all the imported or created data sources that I have in the Power BI report, which right now it says I don't have any. So it looks like a lot's going on here in the report page view. Our report view is where our visualizations will go once we import the data. The visualizations or the viz, gets added to a page. And right over here, you have your 3 panes: filters, visualization, and data. I appreciate the fact that these can be expanded and collapsed because you don't always need to use them. I'll collapse them for now. Now, there's another area in Power BI that I want to discuss now. That was my report view. I also have something known as the table view. And when I go to that view, it's going to take me away from my page and my 3 panes. The table view will actually show me a preview of any data I have in the report. And the reason why this is entirely empty here, well, I don't have any data in my report yet. Once we do get our tables imported, you're going to notice that these data sets that you work with, they're going to have certain columns that relate to each other. You might have a list of products in one table and a list of sales in another. And the product IDs are located in the sales table. That way you can pull details from the products into the sales table. In order to establish relationships, Power BI has something known as the model view. When I go into the model view here, I'm switching from the table view to the model view. It's going to show me my tables that I've imported or created. And it's going to allow me to establish relationships between them. There might be a situation where I can connect my table using a date from one table to another date from another table, or an ID from one table, from ID to another table. We'll play with the model view once we import 2 data sources and need to establish relationships between them. So, Power BI is a pretty powerful tool. It's a pretty comfortable tool to start using because it has access to the ribbon, something we're already used to if we've used Microsoft 365 tools. I think the more important areas to understand is the report view and the details behind it. The table view. And of course, the model view. We're going to be working with all of these areas today in order to get our report created. Now, coming up next, I want to talk about using data sources. I want to actually get some data in this report. So if you haven't yet, I think it'd be best if you open up a Power BI report file and save it. And just tour the interface. Make sure you can access your report view, your table view, your model view. Make sure that you can open and expand your filters, visualizations, and your data pane. Make sure that you can access your pages and even toggle between the mobile view as well as the desktop view. In the next portion, we'll talk about getting data. which we can do from various areas like our Home tab, Get Data, or even on this icon here, Get Data, this hyperlink, or even directly on the page itself since there's nothing on it. Coming up next, we'll talk about getting and importing data. Power BI allows us to import from various data sources, and they're constantly adding more. Now, if you want to see a list of those data sources that you can add from, the more commonly used data sources will be listed from the Home tab. Inside the Data command group, you can actually find the Get Data drop-down from there. And the common data sources will be listed on the very top there. If you don't see the data source you're looking for, these aren't the only ones available. You also have the option to go to more. From here, you can filter by category and even scroll through the entire full list that you can use to connect and import data from. Things like a SharePoint online list, Access database, Salesforce objects, Salesforce reports, a smart sheet, a SharePoint list, a Python script, Asana, which is currently in beta mode. So many various different data connections that you can use, and they're constantly adding more. Constantly. So, for today's session, I want to actually use a data source on the web. Import data from a web page. There is a data source on the fdic.gov site. The link will be in the description of this video. But it's actually going to show me the failed bank list. And this list includes banks which have failed since October 1st of 2000. And then down here below is the list itself, going across 48 different clicks. I have the opportunity to download the data as a CSV file. But I also want to make sure that this data is always up to date. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose to just copy the linked address. And this will allow me to just copy the address for the CSV file that I'll use as a web source for my Power BI report. So I'm going to use this web connection. I'll paste the URL. If the web page you're trying to connect to requires credentials, it would typically pop up here to have you input the credentials once you're trying to connect. And it looks like it was able to find the data source. It found the columns that I was looking for: bank name, city, state, certification, acquiring institution, closing date, and fund. Now, I have the opportunity to load this data and work with it as is. And I also have this opportunity to transform the data. And this will take me directly to Power Query, which I can do at a later time. I first want to show you how the data would look once it's imported into the report view. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to transform the data later. from the Home tab, I'll open up Power Query. So for right now, I'm going to get that web source, and I'm going to choose to load that in. Okay. When I've done this, I can see the report view. There's a new update to it. I can see the data pane has the bank list imported. If I expand this, I can see those columns that I've imported. Acquiring institution, bank name, certification, city, closing date, fund, and state. Oh, they're also in alphabetical order. Let's take a look at my table view. The table view is showing me a preview of my table that I've imported. The data pane is still available for me. If I go over to my model view, I can see that the bank list is in the model view available for me, but there's no other table to establish relationships to yet. What I want to start doing next is I want to transform the data. I want to transform the data using Power Query, because I'm realizing that with the data that I've imported, there are certain columns that I don't plan to use. There are certain columns that I need to create. And there are certain columns that I need to combine. And I'll be doing all that using the Power Query tool that's built into PowerBi. From the Home tab, transform data in the Queries command group. So I think what would be best now is if you can pause the video and see if you can get your bank list loaded into your PowerBi report. And go ahead and hit the save icon. All right. I've went ahead and loaded the data into my report. Now it's time to make some transformations to this data, because I'm realizing I don't need all of these columns. There's also some modifications that I need to make to some of the columns. So in order to go over and launch Power Query, PowerBi has a Home tab, and from there we have a command group called Queries. We can actually open up transform data. That will let us use the Power Query editor to connect, prepare, and transform data. Now, the Power Query window will open up, and it will take place of your PowerBi report. The PowerBi report is still behind the Power Query window. I want you all to know that. If we want to get back to the PowerBi report and continue working on the report view, we can hit close and apply. Goes right back to the report view, but I'm going to open up Power Query again. I wasn't done talking about it. So Power Query opens up, and if you've noticed, you get access to something very similar, a ribbon. This ribbon also has tabs like Home, Transform, Add Column, View, Tools, and Help. on the left-hand side here, I can see the queries that I've imported. There's only one so far, called bank list. I can see a preview of the data, and I can see the data type that's assigned to the column, as well as the column name. I also have this ability to filter the data from here before bringing it into my report. Now, on the right-hand side, I can see some query settings where it says properties and applied steps. Now, if you accidentally have closed this window and it's not available for you right now, I just want you to know that you can go to your View tab and you have the opportunity to turn on the query settings again. It just shows right back up. Now, the query settings has a properties dropdown, and from there you can rename the query itself. I'll call this one the failed bank list, since that's what it is. When I'm looking at this next window on the bottom, it says applied steps, and I see that there's 3 steps that are currently applied: source, promoted headers, and change type. There's a little gear icon near each one of these where I can see the actual script and the settings behind it. This is the step where it promoted the headers. I can see the top row became headers there. And this is the step where it detected the data types. These are automatic steps that the Power BI or Power Query window did for me. Everything that you do in Power Query is an applied step. So the next thing I want to do is I want to remove certain columns that I no longer need. I know this report came with a certification column. I don't plan to use that in my report, so to clean up my data, I want to remove it. I also want to get rid of the acquiring institution, since I won't be using that in my report. And I also want to get rid of the fund. So, the Power Query window allows me to go to my Home tab, and I have a command group called Manage Columns here. I can highlight a column, and I can choose to remove the column, and that simply applies a new step to the Applied Steps window. Now, if you want to undo that step, you just simply hit that little X there. Step goes away. Since I need to remove more than one column, I'm going to use the Choose Columns option from the Manage Columns command group. This will allow me to select the columns that I want to keep in one go. So I don't want certification. I don't want acquiring institution. And I don't want fund. I'm going to keep the bank name, the city, the state, and the closing dates. So that's my first transformation there. I think what would be best is if you pause the video and see if you can do that first transformation in Power Query with the data source that you've imported to your report. We'll do another transformation when you come right back. I'm hoping that process went smooth, but let's start talking about transformation number 2, now that we removed the columns. This time, I want to extract the year from the closing date. And Power Query has built-in transformation tools to help me do that. With the closing date column selected, I have the opportunity to right-click it. And my next step is going to be to duplicate the column. This duplicate column will be the year column. So that's going to add a new applied step. With this duplicated column, I have the ability to right-click, and I can use the built-in transformation. From here, I'm going to select to transform it to a year. And that adds another applied step. And finally, I'm going to go and up to the top where the header is located. Double click in there and relabel it to year. I'll go ahead and leave the data type as is. This last transformation we did has 3 applied steps. We duplicated a column with a right click. We right clicked and we transformed and pulled out the year. Just so we understand what that means, we transformed, went to year, and pulled out the year. And then with the very top, we renamed the header row. I think it'd be best if you pause the video before we move on to transformation number 3. And practice doing transformation number 2 so that you have these 3 applied steps. Transformation number 3, I want to combine the city and the state. And this transformation has a built-in tool that allows me to do so. In fact, if I go over to the Transform tab here, the Add column there, I have the opportunity to use a command group called General from the Add column tab. Keep in mind, this is in my Power Query window. And one of the tools I have is columns from examples. The keyboard shortcut is Control-E. This allows me to give one example of the column that I want to create. So I'll do city, and then I'll do state. When I hit enter, I've just typed in 1, but it did every single other row for me. I can rename this to city, comma, state, and hit OK. So I've done 3 transformations total here. I removed columns. This was done in my Home tab. After I moved the columns, I transformed the year. That was done with the right click on my closing date. And finally, I did a column from example to combine and merge 2 columns. And that was found in the Add Column tab. So I think it would be best to make sure that you're able to do all 3 of these action items before we close and apply this data back into the report. That's a little bit on using Power Query to shape, transform, and combine your data. Up next, we'll close and apply this data from the Home tab and go back into the Power BI report. From there, we'll start talking about how to build our beautiful reports and even choose to create additional tables with special DAX functions. So it's time to go ahead and close and apply this. And I can see all of the updates are now reflective on the report. I want to create a table of dates. This will help with filtering. I want to be able to get this failed bank list data and filter a specific date, a specific year, a specific quarter. And this data only has 568 dates. If I go over to the table view, this data has 568 rows. So it doesn't have every date of the year. It will only list the date if a bank has closed. That means I won't be able to filter by quarter, filter by year, because the date and time intelligence isn't there. It only has the dates the banks have closed. What I want to do next is I want to build a calendar table. The calendar table is going to span dates across the dates used in the model. So I'm thinking of maybe using a calendar from January 1st, 2000 to December 31st, 2024, since that will span across the entire dates of my data model. So, earlier we used getData to import data. Next, what I want to do is I'm going to go over to my table view, and I'm going to create a new table for my calendar. That way I'll have dates spanning across the full data model range. Now, in order for us to build the table, we're going to be using a set of functions, DAX functions, data analysis expressions. You can find a list of all 250 DAX functions on the Microsoft support pages. But the one DAX function I'm thinking of to get this job done is called Calendar Auto. This returns a table with a single column, name date, that contains a contiguous set of dates. The range of dates is calculated automatically based on the data in the model. That's the golden part there. The range of dates is calculated automatically based on the data in the model. So I'm going to use this function here to build my new table. I'm going to name this table calendar. And I'm going to set the calendar table equal to calendar auto. I can select tab to auto-complete the function name, and I can just close the parenthesis with nothing in it. And that will create my contiguous set of dates that span across the data model. Now that I have the date table created, I want to add a new column to it. So I have the calendar table selected, and that gives me access to the Table Tools tab, where I can add a new column to the table I've created. This new column, I'm going to go ahead and call month. And I'll set it equal to the month. And in the month function, I'm going to use the calendar date column. That'll grab the month for me. Very similar to our Excel syntax. I'm going to do that as well, but this time I'm going to do the month name. I'm going to use the format function. The format function is another DAX function, which allows me to use 3 M's for abbreviated months and 4 M's for a full spelled out month name. I can use the format function to give me a full spelled out month. It converts a value to a text according to the specific format. So I'll just give it the date as the value and format it with the 4 M's. So the calendar date inside the format function, comma, in quotes, 4 lowercase m's, close the parenthesis, and hit enter. I'm also going to grab a new column, again, this time for the year. Earlier, we used PowerCreate to create the year column in our table. This time, we're using DAX. I'll extract the calendar date. Close the parenthesis and hit enter. I could keep going. I can get quarter, day of the week in French, day of the week in Spanish, fiscal year quarter number. I can keep going and building a very robust calendar table. But this does the job that I need it to do. I have the ability to filter by dates, by months, and by years across my entire date range, not just the dates that a bank has closed. So if I go back to my report view, I will see I have a calendar table and the failed bank list. If I go to my table view, I will see I have a calendar table and a failed bank list. And if I go over to my model view, I will now see I have a calendar table and a failed bank list. Coming up next, we're going to talk about establishing table relationships so that Power BI knows that this column relates to these dates in this column. In order for us to let these two tables communicate with each other, we have to connect the closing date to the dates in our calendar table. Now, it does not matter from what end you grab, because it knows how to build the connection type automatically. But you do have to make sure to align the closing date to the date, or to align the date to the closing date, and not another column. It will match up the dates from my calendar to the closing dates of the failed banks, allowing me to filter with this data. This is letting me know that there's a single date, and there might be many occurrences of a date in the failed bank list, known as a one-to-many relationship. It's time to start building and producing our report, which we can do inside the report view. Before we get started with our first visual, I want to spend some time preparing our page. So, you're about to get started building your Power BI report. And a couple of useful tips that you might want to know about are found in the View tab of the Power BI desktop app. Something I prefer to use is grid lines. The grid lines will help me manually align my visualizations. So like, for example, if I go to my Insert tab and I insert a text box here, do you see how the grid lines show up? I really find that helpful for me. I'm going to delete this text box really quickly. The grid lines go away when there's nothing on the visual. Same thing if you pick a visual here, the grid lines show up. I'll delete the visual here. I also prefer to use snap to grid. When I do this, let me insert my text box again. The text box just feels a little bit more snappy when I move it around. It snaps to the dots on the grid, which I find useful for aligning my visualizations, objects and items across the page. Before actually adding your first visualization or your text box, I encourage you to determine whether or not you want to use grid lines or snap to grid. Pause the video and get a feel for how these things would show up and feel for you when you're moving objects around the page. Next, I want to talk about this visualizations pane. It might be collapsed for some of us, so make sure to expand it. Before we select any visuals, I think it's best to go over to the paper and the paintbrush. This allows me to format my report page. Let me update the page information. Instead of calling it page 1, I'll call it the failed banks report. I'll collapse the page information. Notice how the page name got updated down below. I also have the ability to update the canvas background with a specific color or an image. Folks, if you do use a color and you select a color, the transparency is set to 100%, so the color won't show up upon first selecting it. You have to change the transparency setting to see the color. Now, even if you're going to stick with the white background, I encourage you as you're building the report to pick a color. That way you can tell where your visualization lines up versus where the background is. Makes it a lot easier to align your visuals when it's a different color than the background. So I'll leave it a little bit gray there with maybe about 50% transparency. So small little updates before building and actually adding your first visual. In the View tab, I prefer to use the grid lines. I can see that's checkmarked on. I prefer to use Snap to Grid. And I also have made sure to update my page information. I'm going to go over back to my Insert tab now and finally add my text box. I'm just going to put it to the top of the report there. Now, when I build my report, I don't like having the report touch, or the objects of my report, I should say. I don't like them having touching the end of the page. It makes it hard to grab them and relocate them and move them around when you need to edit things. So I typically like having them kind of around the edges where I can still grab the edge here. I can still grab the edge here with blank space. I'll call this one the failed banks report. And of course, we have formatting tools. Now, when I select a text box or a visual, it ends up updating the visualization pane with additional details. Like here, I can add a title to my text box. I can choose effects for my text box. I can change the transparency for the text box. I can add visual borders to the text box. Here, I'm going to round the corners a bit. But you have to make sure to have that selected in order to see the visualization pane update with these items. And then if you deselect it again, it goes back to the original visualization pane. And then here I can browse through my reports or the visualizations that I have access to when adding the report. So I think what's best before we add our first visualization to the report page, spend some time setting up your page. Use your page options, set up your page formatting, add in your text box and format it, and come back and we'll start talking about adding our first visual and working with some of this data here. Now, the first visualization that I want to pick here, I'm going to go ahead and pick the stacked column chart. And here I can design how the visualization will show up on the page. Since it's the one visualization, I'll just make it nice and large. Now, I always try to make sure to not let a visualization touch another piece or object because it'll make it harder to move them around in the future. So I kind of leave a little space in between all of them. Even if it's just one or two dots, notice how there's a dot of space in between it, making it easier to grab it in the future, making it easier to work with these tools in the future. Now, I want to see, let's take a look here. I have this option for the visualization to add something for the x-axis and the y-axis and the legend. I don't have to use all of these fields, but let's see if I can list maybe the bank names on my y-axis. Let's see how that looks. Okay, it's the count of bank names. 568 rows. There's 568 bank names. That makes sense. I'm going to add in for my x-axis the month names. Maybe I can see the bank names, the banks that failed month by month. I can break down this data. All right, that looks good. Notice how I was able to use the bank name from one table and the month name from a separate table because these two tables have relationships using the date columns. It knows that they can talk to each other. So it says that for the month of July here, 75 banks have closed. October 63. April 60. January 51. 45. Oh, they're getting smaller. They're getting smaller, so it's sorted based off the count of bank names. I think it'd be better if I sort it or I should do it sorted by months instead, I think. January should be up there. Let's see if I can change the visualization sort order. In order to sort the axis that you've added, the X and Y axis, you have the option to select the ellipses on the visual. Right now, it's being sorted by the count of bank name. I'm going to check mark month name. I'm going to go back over to my ellipses here, and I also want to make sure to sort this in ascending order. And I'm coming to realize that the sort order is sorting it alphabetically. It's starting with the A's and then D's and then F's and then J's. It doesn't go in the month order where January, February, March show up first. So in order to fix this, I have to go back to my table view. I have to sort the month numbers with the month names. In the table view, I can access my calendar table that I created. And for this month name column, it's treating it as text. The format function formats things as text. I have the ability to sort this column by the month. That way January is 1, February is 2, March is 3. When I do that, and I go back over to my report view, it's going to do that reflective change, and now it knows to sort that text column using the number column. So before we add another visual to our report, I think it's best if you sort the axis by month name in ascending order. Once you realize that the sort is not showing up in month sorting, head over to your table view. The table view will allow you to select the month name and use your column tools. From there, you can sort by a new column. And I've sorted the month name. That's the column that's selected when I have this item open by the month. Your report should show up with the months in the correct order, and the count should remain the same for each month. I just sorted it differently for me now. Give this a go, and we'll start talking about some additional visuals that you can add to the report area there. Similar to what we did with our text box, we also want to make sure to format the visualizations we add. So if you do select a visualization, you're going to notice that the visualization panes updates. This no longer lets you format the page, but now it lets you format the visual that you have selected. Notice how the icon shows a graph instead of a page. So just be sure to have the correct visual selected when you want to go and format it. And I'm going to go over to the Format Your Visual option. From here, we have various formatting tools for the x-axis and the y-axis. I have the ability to change the label colors if I need to. I can see the month names for my x-axis have changed. Change the maximum and minimum height. I can also turn off the months if I needed to. I'll turn them back on there, and increase the font size of these if I needed to as well. Yeah, make this bigger for us so that we can see the font size get bigger. I can choose whether or not I want a title for my x-axis, or turn it off. There's different layouts, the minimum category width for the x-axis, and altogether I can always reset these items if I need to. Same with the y-axis. I can control the values and how they're formatted, and increase the font sizes to them. I don't have a legend for this chart, but I have options to format the legend. I have the ability to use grid lines and the style of grid lines that I want. I can turn off the grid lines. Instead, maybe use data labels. I can make this chart a little bit bigger so it can show all the numbers on the outside end. There we go. Update the plot area background with an image if I need to. A lot of amazing updates that you can do with your visualizations. These are the visualization updates, and there's also general settings, like the properties, the size, the height, the position, whether or not you want a title. I'll call it Failed Banks by Month. And how you want that title formatted. I'll go ahead and center that. I can add a background color to the title portion. Make it nice and bold. So a lot of different options, even effects for the actual, here, I'll change it to be a little bit purple there. Too hard to read. I'll go back to white. I can make it transparent. Add a visual border as well. I'll round the corners to this as well, since I did for my failed banks report text box. So a lot of times you might miss these options because you can live your life not formatting your visuals, just using the default visual that shows up, but the visualizations all have these abilities to be formatted. Now, I want to be able to filter my report. So what I think what we should do is spend some time formatting this, pause the video, and I want to add in a new filter visual to filter the data in my report. So if I hover over these visuals, we have something known as a slicer. The slicer was invented in 2010 for tables in Excel and 2013 for pivot tables in Excel. When you select another visual, be sure to have everything deselected because it's going to replace the current visual if you have it selected. Here, I have access to a new visual area, but this one only allows me to add values. I'm going to do month name as the values here. Oh, delete. Let me select the visual first. Month name. And here it gives me this little drop down where I can select the months and filter by them. But I'm going to format this slicer so that the slicer shows up not as a vertical list. I have the option to choose a drop down or a tile. Kind of like how that looks down there. Of course, I have different formatting options for the slicer as well. But now I can select the months and it filters my report. If I hold down the control key, it allows me to select multiple items. Try adding in a slicer for the month names. And then once the slicer is added, try formatting the slicer. That way you have tiles for the slicer, which works better for month names like this. If you are going to include a slicer, I highly recommend to go over to your Insert tab and take advantage of the Elements command group. There is a Clear All Slicers option there, and from there you can add a nice little button that you can use to clear your slicers. Looks like I need a little bit of space for this. Let me make this smaller here. I'll make this a little bit smaller here. I'll make this more narrow. Moving this up a little bit higher. And of course, I'll move the Clear All Slicers down below. And I'll go ahead and format this as well. So if I select something and I want to clear it, I can just click on this option here, Clear All Slicers. So we have four, a text box visual, We have a stacked column chart. We have a slicer. And we even have a button. All on the single page. Pause the video and make sure you're able to add these items to the report page. All right, congratulations everyone. You've completed the Power BI beginner course. Stay tuned for Power BI intermediate. We'll dive a little bit deeper into the report publishing options, as well as some more visualizations like the matrix and table. In this lesson of introducing Power BI, we spent time navigating the interface, importing from data sources, using DAX to even create a table, ultimately learning how to build a report with best practices, played around with the transform data to shape, transform, and combine with the Power Query tool, helping us produce reports using the data we made transformations to. Stay tuned for Power BI Intermediate. We'll deep dive into some more advanced visuals, as well as talk about some more advanced DAX examples, before finally concluding the course with Power BI Advanced, where we talk about publishing and using the web service for the report and creating dashboards.